Marina Cole, 31, woke each day under the weight of a horizon she could never reach. It wasn't the gray Seattle sky or the rain drumming against her Capitol Hill apartment windows that suffocated her. It was the mirror in her bedroom, where she saw a woman who never measured up to her own expectations. A talented architect at Emerald Designs, a prestigious firm shaping Seattle's skyline in the early 2000s, a time of gleaming skyscrapers and tech-fueled ambition, Marina fought a silent enemy, the perfectionism that paralyzed her. At 5:47 a.m., while the city slumbered under the Puget Sound's mist, Marina was already awake, poring over architectural sketches. Her oak desk was a chaotic shrine, precise lines, meticulous calculations, but not a single project finished. Every drawing, every blueprint was revised endlessly, tweaked to exhaustion, never perfect enough. A skyscraper she designed for downtown Seattle, meant to be a city landmark, was months behind schedule. The firm's board pressed her, colleagues whispered about her obsession, but Marina couldn't stop. To her, a single flaw, no matter how small, was a verdict of failure. Her perfectionism wasn't confined to work. It bled into every corner of her life. Her apartment, pristine with minimalist furniture and stark white walls, looked like a magazine spread but felt lifeless. She declined friends' invitations, fearing she wasn't prepared enough to be the ideal companion. Relationships? A string of dates that ended before they began, as no partner met the impossible standards she set. Even her appearance, neatly styled brown hair, carefully chosen outfits, was armor to hide the insecurity gnawing at her. The roots of this perfectionism lay buried in her past. The daughter of Portuguese immigrants who arrived in Seattle in the 1970s, Marina grew up hearing that hard work and excellence were the only ways to prove her worth. Her mother, Clara, a seamstress, and her father, João, a civil engineer, built a modest but stable life in Fremont. They instilled in Marina that good wasn't enough. Everything had to be exceptional. As a teenager, she was the student revising essays until midnight, the athlete training to collapse, the daughter who never said no to avoid disappointing them. Now, at 31, that mindset was destroying her. That morning, as she reviewed a sustainable building design for the 10th time, Marina felt a tightness in her chest. It wasn't new, anxiety attacks came often, paired with insomnia and headaches no medicine could ease. She opened the window, letting Seattle's damp air in, but relief didn't come. Instead, a memory struck, her father years ago looking at her childhood drawings and saying, "Marina, this is good, but it can be better." Those words, meant lovingly, had become an invisible chain. At work, the pressure mounted. Her boss, Daniel Harper, a veteran architect, called her into a meeting. "Marina, your talent is undeniable, but you're holding the team back. This building needs to be ready for the client presentation next week. Why isn't it done?" The question, blunt, cut like a knife. Marina tried to explain, design tweaks, sustainability concerns, structural details, but her words sounded like excuses. Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. "You need to decide. Do you want to be perfect, or do you want to deliver?" That night, alone in her apartment, Marina opened a bottle of wine and stared at her sketches. The desk, littered with papers, felt like a battlefield. She picked up a drawing, an early draft she'd discarded for not being good enough, and for a moment saw beauty in its imperfect lines. It was functional, creative, human. But the weight of self-criticism made her tear it apart. The sound of ripping paper echoed in the silence, and Marina felt hot tears fall. She wasn't just failing the project, she was failing herself. The next day, walking through Pike Place Market, Seattle's pulsing heart, Marina saw a street artist painting a mural. The colors were vibrant, but the lines imperfect. Tourists clapped, enchanted. The painter, a middle-aged woman with a serene smile, seemed at peace with her creation. Marina stopped, mesmerized. How could someone be so comfortable with imperfection? The question lingered, a seed of doubt planted in fertile ground. Maybe good enough was indeed enough. The sun rose timidly over Seattle, its soft light cutting through the mist that hugged the Puget Sound. Marina Cole walked the cobblestone streets of Capitol Hill, the rich aroma of fresh coffee from espresso vivace mingling with the damp air. It was 2002, and the city pulsed with the energy of the tech boom, a place where startups flourished and skyscrapers rose as symbols of progress. But for Marina, each step was a reminder of her inability to keep up with that rhythm. At 31, she was a brilliant architect at Emerald Designs, but the weight of perfectionism kept her anchored, unable to move forward. In the office, a glass-walled space in downtown Seattle, Marina was both admired and feared. Her colleagues, a mix of ambitious young professionals and seasoned veterans, respected her talent but whispered about her obsession. "She's a genius, but she never finishes anything," said Rachel, a graphic designer, over coffee in the meeting room. The skyscraper project, dubbed Aurora Tower, was the firm's biggest. Meant to be a sustainable landmark with solar panels and a design that captured Seattle's essence, the project was stalled in Marina's hands. Every detail, the curve of a window, the energy efficiency of a system, was revised to exhaustion. She didn't trust anyone to touch her drawings, fearing any intervention would compromise perfection. The people around Marina were mirrors of her inner struggle. Daniel Harper, her boss, 55, was a gray-haired architect with piercing eyes, a man who had built emerald designs with pragmatism. He saw Marina's potential, but his patience was wearing thin. "You have until Friday to deliver the final sketches," he said one morning, his voice firm but not unkind. "The investors won't wait, Marina. Neither will Seattle." She nodded, her stomach churning, knowing she wouldn't meet the deadline. Daniel wasn't just a boss. He had mentored Marina's father, Joao, in the 80s and carried a quiet responsibility for her. But even he didn't know how to break her cycle of self-sabotage. Clara, Marina's mother, 60, was a retired seamstress living in Fremont, in a modest townhouse filled with memories. Her hands, calloused from years of threading needles, now trembled slightly from early arthritis. Clara loved Marina deeply, but her strict upbringing, rooted in the work ethic of Portuguese immigrants, had planted the seed of perfectionism. "You've always been our star," she'd say, proud, unaware of how her words echoed as a demand. Joao, 62, the civil engineer father, was more reserved. He saw his own obsession with details in Marina but, now retired, didn't know how to help. When he visited, he brought pastries from a local bakery and tried to talk, but Marina deflected, focused on her sketches. Then there was Lena, 28, Marina's best friend since architecture school at the University of Washington. Lena, now an interior designer, was Marina's opposite, practical, laid-back, comfortable with imperfection. She worked on smaller projects but always delivered on time, which secretly irked Marina. Lena tried to pull her friend to dinners or walks through Pike Place Market, but Marina declined, claiming she was too busy. Lena knew it was more than that. She saw the exhaustion in Marina's eyes, the tension in her shoulders, but her offers to help were rebuffed. "You can't fix the world alone, Mari," Lena said once, but Marina just smiled, changing the subject. Seattle in the early 2000s was vibrant, but unforgiving to those who couldn't keep up. The tech boom brought wealth, but also fierce competition. Emerald Designs competed with giants like Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, and the Aurora Tower was their chance to shine. Marina felt that weight. Walking through the office, she saw glass and steel models, colleagues collaborating in teams, while she isolated herself, revising every line alone. Outside work, Seattle was a contrast. The fish-throwing market, bustling cafes, the Space Needle's lights glowing at night. But Marina didn't live it. Her world was her sterile apartment, the office, and a desk buried in sketches. The first challenge came on a rainy Monday. During a meeting with investors, Marina presented a preliminary Aurora Tower sketch. She'd spent nights tweaking details, but as she spoke, she faltered. "We're still refining the energy efficiency," she said, avoiding eyes. An investor, a woman in a gray suit named Vivian Chin, frowned. "Refining? This should be done. We're investing millions, Ms. Cole." The silence in the room was deafening. Daniel stepped in, promising progress, but the look he gave Marina was one of disappointment. That night, at home, Marina opened her sketchbook. Each page was a work of art, but incomplete. She picked up a pencil, drew a line, and stopped. Vivian's voice echoed, "We're investing millions." Daniel's, "You need to decide." And loudest, her father's, "It can be better." Marina's chest tightened, her breath shallow. An anxiety attack made her drop the pencil, which rolled to the floor. She stood, walking to the window. Rain streaked the glass, and Seattle outside seemed alive while she felt dead inside. The next day, Lena found her at the office, bringing coffee. "You look like a zombie, Mari," she teased. Marina laughed, but the sound was hollow. Lena pressed. "Why not let me help? I can review the Aurora's interior layouts. It doesn't need to be perfect, just functional." Marina waved her off. "I've got it, Lena. I always do." But saying it, she knew it was a lie. The challenge wasn't the project or the investors. It was herself, her inability to let go of control, to accept that good enough might be the way. Walking home, Marina passed Pike Place Market again. The same street artist was there, now painting a new mural. This time, Marina noticed a flaw, a crooked line in the painting. The artist, catching her gaze, smiled. "Sometimes imperfections tell the best story," she said. Marina stood still, the words resonating. For the first time, she wondered if perfectionism, which she'd always seen as her strength, was actually her greatest weakness. Seattle's rain fell like a veil over Capitol Hill, turning the streets into liquid mirrors that reflected the neon glow of cafes and bars. Marina Cole, with deep circles under her brown eyes, walked quickly, her soaked hoodie clinging to her. It was Thursday, and the deadline to deliver the final Aurora Tower sketches was less than 24 hours away. The weight of the disastrous investor meeting still suffocated her, and the street artist's words, "Sometimes imperfections tell the best story," echoed in her mind but found no foothold. For Marina, imperfection was synonymous with failure, and failure was unacceptable. At the Emerald Designs office, a glass-walled space downtown, the atmosphere was a mix of tension and energy. Computers hummed, printers spat out blueprints, and colleagues worked in teams, laughing and swapping ideas. Marina, however, was isolated at her desk, surrounded by a fortress of papers and calculations. She revised the Aurora Tower design, tweaking a solar panel's angle for the 10th time. Each change felt essential, yet it led her to a dead end. The clock read 7:43 p.m., and the office was emptying. Rachel, the graphic designer, passed by her desk. "Staying till midnight again, Marina?" she asked, her tone half joking, half concerned. Marina forced a smile. "Just a bit longer," she replied, but her voice wavered. Marina's solitude wasn't just physical. Her refusal to delegate built an invisible barrier between her and others. Lena, her best friend, had tried to help again that week, texting, "Mari, let me look at the layouts. I can help with the interiors." Marina replied with a curt, "Thanks, but I'm fine." She wasn't. The anxiety, once coming in waves, was now a constant current, pulling her under. Her hands trembled as she held her pencil, and the tightness in her chest returned every time she thought about the deadline. A new conflict arose when Daniel Harper, her boss, called her for a private talk. He stood by the window, gazing at Seattle's skyline, where the Space Needle glowed under the rain. "Marina," he began, his tone softer than usual, "you're the best architect we've ever had. But this perfectionism, it's killing you. And it's killing the project." He turned, his eyes tired but firm. "If you don't deliver tomorrow, I'll hand the Aurora Tower to another team." The threat, spoken without malice, hit like a punch. Marina felt the ground vanish. Hand the project to another team? It was like tearing out a piece of her. "I'll deliver," she promised, her voice hoarse but without conviction. That night, at home, Marina tried to work but exhaustion won. She collapsed on the couch, her laptop open with the Aurora Tower sketch. The screen glowed, accusing. She grabbed her phone and on impulse called Clara, her mother. "Mom, I don't know if I can do this," she confessed, her voice breaking. Clara, on the other end, was silent for a moment. "My daughter, you've always been so hard on yourself. Remember your grandmother? She sewed dresses until dawn, but she never demanded perfection from anyone. Only herself. And it left her so tired." The story of her grandmother, whom Marina always saw as a beacon of strength, revealed itself as a mirror of her own struggle. Clara finished. "You don't need to be perfect to be enough." Clara's words planted a new seed of doubt, but Marina still resisted. The next day, the pressure hit a new peak. During a team meeting, she presented a revised Aurora Tower version, but Vivian Chun, the investor, cut her off. "This is nearly identical to what we saw last week," she said, her voice sharp. "If there's no progress, we might need to reconsider funding." The comment was a public blow. Rachel and other colleagues exchanged uneasy glances, and Daniel, visibly frustrated, asked Marina to sit. For the first time, she felt shame burn, not for failing, but for being seen as incapable. After the meeting, Lena found her in the hallway. "Mari, stop this," she said, gripping her shoulders. "You don't have to do everything alone. Let me help, or you'll lose this project." Marina, eyes brimming, shook her head. "You don't understand, Lena. If it's not perfect, it's not mine." Lena sighed, hurt. "And if it's perfect but destroys you? Is it worth it?" The question hung unanswered. That afternoon, Marina walked to the Fremont Troll, the iconic sculpture under the Aurora Bridge. The grotesque figure, with its metal eyes and hands clutching a Volkswagen Beetle, was a Seattle symbol, imperfect, strange, but beloved. She sat there, under the rain, thinking of the Pike Place artist her grandmother Clara described Lena. They all seemed to find peace in imperfection, unlike her. An elderly man, passing with an umbrella, noticed her. "You look lost, young lady," he said with a kind smile. "Sometimes, what we're looking for isn't what we find." The simple words resonated. Marina looked at the troll, its rough lines, and felt an emptiness that wasn't just exhaustion but a longing to change. Back at her apartment, Marina opened her sketchbook. This time, instead of revising, she picked up an old drawing, an early Aurora Tower sketch she'd discarded for flaws. Looking now, she saw potential. It was bold, functional, human. For the first time, she considered sending it as is. But fear of failure, of judgment, still held her back. She closed the sketchbook, her heart torn. The deadline was looming, and Marina knew she had to choose. Keep chasing perfection or risk being good enough. Friday dawned with a heavy, gray sky over Seattle, as if the city knew Marina Cole faced the most decisive day of her career. The deadline to deliver the final Aurora Tower sketches had arrived, and Daniel Harper's threat, to hand the project to another team, pulsed in her mind like a drum. Marina woke at 4:30 a.m., her apartment silent except for the rain pattering against the windows. She sat at her desk, sketchbook open, the imperfect Aurora Tower drawing staring back at her. For the first time, she considered sending it as is, but the fear of being judged as inadequate paralyzed her. Instead, she spent hours revising, tweaking trivial details, while the clock ticked mercilessly. At the Emerald Designs office, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. The team knew the Aurora Tower's importance to the firm's reputation. Marina arrived with deep circles under her eyes, clutching a folder of revised sketches. Daniel met her at the entrance, his gaze a mix of hope and frustration. "Is it ready, Marina?" he asked bluntly. She hesitated, heart racing. "Almost," she replied, knowing almost wasn't enough. The investor meeting was set for 2 p.m., and Marina felt time slipping away like the rain down Seattle streets. The turning point came unexpectedly, not as a failure, but as a revelation that shook Marina's foundations. That morning, while organizing her sketches, she received an email from João, her father. It was rare for him to write. João preferred calls or visits with bakery pastries. The email's subject was simple: "To my daughter." Curious, Marina opened it. It was a digital letter, written with the formality of an older generation but brimming with emotion. João shared a story Marina had never heard. In the 80s, he worked on a Seattle Bridge project, a milestone in his career. But, obsessed with details, he delayed delivery, nearly costing his job. "I wanted it to be perfect," he wrote. "But I learned too late that my biggest mistake wasn't a miscalculation. It was not trusting my team. It was thinking I had to do everything alone." João's words were a shock. Marina had always seen her father as a model of competence, an engineer whose precision inspired her career. Learning that he, too, had struggled with perfectionism and nearly lost everything because of it was like looking in a mirror. The email ended with a confession. "You're stronger than I was, Marina. But strength isn't carrying everything alone. It's knowing when to ask for help." He attached an old photo of him and Clara smiling at the bridge construction, surrounded by colleagues. The image radiated collaboration, something Marina avoided at all costs. The letter's impact was immediate. Marina felt hot tears stream down as she read, sitting at her workstation. She looked at the Aurora Tower sketch, the one she'd deemed imperfect the night before, and for the first time, saw it differently. It wasn't perfect, but it was functional, innovative, a reflection of her vision. The revelation that her father, her greatest role model, had also faltered under perfectionism's weight broke something inside her. Not shame, but relief. If João had survived this, maybe she could too. But the deadline's pressure offered no reprieve. At 1 p.m., Marina was still revising sketches, unable to decide which version to submit. Lena, who'd stopped by the office to drop off her own project, noticed her distress. "Mari, what's going on?" she asked, sitting beside her. Marina, voice breaking, showed João's email. Lena read silently, then took her friend's hand. "Your dad's telling you what I've been saying for weeks. You don't need to be perfect. This project? It's already good enough. Let me help you finalize it." For the first time, Marina didn't refuse outright. She hesitated, the weight of the decision crushing her. The investor meeting hit like a storm. Marina, heart in her throat, presented the imperfect sketch she'd considered the night before. Her voice trembled as she explained the design, highlighting its sustainability and functionality, but not promising perfection. Vivian Chun, the investor, raised an eyebrow but listened intently. When Marina finished, the silence in the room was oppressive. Daniel, beside her, seemed tense, awaiting the reaction. To Marina's surprise, Vivian spoke. "This is solid. It's not revolutionary, but it's viable. We can work with this." It wasn't effusive praise, but it was a step. For the first time, Marina felt a timid relief, as if she'd crossed a chasm. After the meeting, Daniel called Marina to his office. "You took a step today," he said with a half-smile. "But you still need to learn to trust the team. I won't hand the project to another group, yet. But I want you to work with Rachel and Lena on the next steps." Marina nodded, torn between gratitude and fear. Trusting others meant letting go of control, something that still terrified her. That night, at Pike Place Market, Marina watched the city pulse. The smell of fresh fish and coffee mingled with the sound of street musicians. She opened her sketchbook and, instead of revising, drew something new. A freehand sketch, no rulers, no calculations. It was a park by the Puget Sound, with crooked lines but full of life. As she drew, she thought of Joao's letter, Lena's words, the street artist. The seed of doubt about her perfectionism was growing, but her father's revelation made her question. What if the strength she sought wasn't in perfection, but in the courage to be vulnerable? The air in Seattle felt lighter that Friday night, as if the rain had washed away some of the weight Marina Cole carried. The investor meeting, though not perfect, had marked a turning point. For the first time, Marina had presented an Aurora Tower sketch without promising perfection, and the fact that Vivian Chun, the demanding investor, called the work viable echoed like a small victory. But her father Joao's letter, confessing his own career-threatening perfectionism, still reverberated in her mind. Marina found herself in a limbo, relieved to have taken a step, but terrified by the idea of trusting others, as Daniel had suggested. On Saturday, Marina woke with an unfamiliar feeling. She hadn't revised sketches until dawn. Instead, she'd slept a few hours, a rare occurrence. Her Capitol Hill apartment, with its stark white walls and minimalist furniture, felt less oppressive in the soft morning light. She grabbed her phone and reread Joao's email, the photo of him and Clara at the bridge construction bringing a hesitant smile. For the first time, Marina considered that maybe her father didn't want her to be perfect, but to be happy. At the Emerald Designs office, reactions to the meeting varied. Daniel Harper, her boss, seemed relieved but cautious. During a conversation in the meeting room, he reiterated his decision. "Marina, you made progress yesterday," he said, tapping his fingers on the table. "But the Aurora Tower is a team project. Rachel will handle the graphics, and I want Lena to collaborate on the interiors. You'll lead, but not alone." Marina nodded, her heart tight. Leading was familiar, sharing control was not. Rachel, the graphic designer, gave an encouraging smile, but Marina still felt a knot in her stomach. Trusting others meant risking flaws she couldn't fix. Lena, on the other hand, reacted with enthusiasm. She showed up at the office that morning, bringing 2 coffees and a notebook full of ideas for the Aurora Tower interiors. "Mari, let's do this together," she said, her eyes sparkling. "You handle the structure, I'll take care of the building's soul, the colors, the spaces where people will live." Marina hesitated, but Lena's warmth disarmed her. For the first time, she let Lena open her sketchbook and suggest changes. "This glass wall here," Lena pointed out, "could have an emerald tint to echo Seattle. It doesn't need to be perfect, just feel like home." Marina felt the urge to correct, to say it needed more calculations, but she held her tongue. It was a start. At home, Clara and Joao also reacted to Marina's subtle shift. She visited them on Sunday, something she rarely did, always too busy. The Fremont townhouse smelled of homemade bread, and Clara, with trembling hands, served tea. Joao, seated at the table, seemed lighter since sending the email. "Did you read what I wrote?" he asked shyly. Marina nodded, eyes welling up. "Dad, I never knew you went through that." Joao smiled, a tired but genuine smile. "I didn't want you to repeat my mistakes, daughter. But I saw you sinking, and I didn't know how to help." Clara touched Marina's hand. "You don't have to carry the world alone, my love. We love you, perfect or not." The interaction with her parents brought a new layer of emotion. Marina realized that the perfectionism she saw as proof of love for her family was, in fact, a barrier pushing them away. For the first time, she shared her insecurities, confessing her fear of failing the Aurora Tower. Clara, tears in her eyes, said, "You think failing is not being perfect? Failing is not trying, Marina. And you're trying." The words, simple but profound, made Marina feel a warmth she hadn't felt in years. At work, the new team dynamic brought unexpected adjustments. Rachel, who once kept her distance, began sharing ideas openly, suggesting graphics that complemented Marina's design. Lena, with her practical energy, brought interior sketches that, though not perfect, had life. Marina, still tense, started to see the project as bigger than herself. But the transition wasn't easy. During a group work session, she corrected a detail in Lena's layout, and her friend laughed. "Mari, relax. It doesn't need to be a masterpiece now. We'll improve it together." Marina's face burned, but she nodded, trying to absorb the idea of together. Outside the office, Seattle seemed to reflect Marina's inner shift. Walking through Pike Place Market, she stopped again to watch the street artist, now working on a new mural with freeform strokes. Marina bought a coffee and sat on a bench, observing. The artist, noticing her, waved. "You're back," she said, smiling. "Like the mural?" Marina hesitated, then replied, "It's different, but beautiful." The artist laughed. "Different is good. Perfect is boring." The brief exchange planted another seed in Marina's mind. Back at her apartment, Marina opened her sketchbook. She picked up the Puget Sound Park drawing she'd made the night before, crooked lines but full of soul. For the first time, she didn't tear it up. Instead, she tucked it away carefully, a reminder that imperfection could be a beginning, not an end. But fear lingered. Working with Lena and Rachel meant exposing her ideas to criticism, something her perfectionism always avoided. And the next phase of the Aurora Tower, final investor approval, would bring more pressure. On Monday, Daniel announced that the investors wanted a full presentation in 2 weeks, with all project elements integrated. Marina felt the old tightness in her chest, but this time, she looked at Lena and Rachel, already discussing ideas. For the first time, she didn't want to take it all on alone. "Okay," she said hesitantly, "let's do this together." It was a small step, but one that made her feel lighter, and at the same time more vulnerable. As she left the office, Marina glanced at Seattle's skyline, the skyscrapers glinting under the rain. For the first time, she wondered if the Aurora Tower didn't need to be perfect to belong in that horizon. But doubt lingered. Could she let go of control enough to let the project, and herself, flourish? The following week brought a deceptive calm to Seattle, with the sky opening in rare moments of sun that made the Puget Sound shimmer like an emerald. Marina Cole, however, felt an inner storm. The decision to work with Lena and Rachel on the Aurora Tower had left her lighter, but also exposed. Each team meeting tested her ability to let go of control, and though she was trying, perfectionism still whispered that any mistake would be her fault. The final investor presentation, set for 10 days away, loomed like a cloud, but new challenges and developments began to complicate Marina's life, both at work and beyond. At the Emerald Designs office, the team dynamic was shifting. Rachel, the graphic designer, brought vibrant sketches for the Aurora Tower's promotional materials, while Lena worked on the interiors, suggesting textures and colors that breathed life into the project. Marina, who once revised every detail alone, now found herself in lively but tense discussions. During one session, Rachel suggested a logo with asymmetrical lines, something Marina instinctively wanted to fix. "It's modern, Mari," Rachel said with a patient smile. "It doesn't need to be symmetrical to work." Marina swallowed the critique, but the urge to fix, it was almost physical. Lena, sensing the tension, stepped in. "Let's test it and tweak later. It doesn't need to be perfect now." Marina nodded, but discomfort lingered. A new challenge arose when Daniel Harper announced that Emerald Designs would compete with a rival firm, Pacific Innovations, for an even bigger contract, a cultural complex in the heart of Seattle. The Aurora Tower would be the showcase to win this project, and the pressure mounted. In a meeting, Daniel looked directly at Marina. "You're leading, but you need to trust the team. Pacific is known for delivering fast. We can't hesitate." Marina felt the familiar tightness in her chest. The idea of another, even more ambitious project made her question if she was ready to lead without controlling everything. Outside work, a new personal development complicated Marina's life further. Clara, her mother, began feeling more intense pain in her hands, and a doctor confirmed her arthritis was progressing. During a visit to the Fremont townhouse, Marina found Clara struggling to hold a teacup. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Clara said with a forced smile, but Marina saw the pain in her eyes. João, beside her, looked worried but tried to keep things light. She needs rest, but you know how stubborn your mom is, he teased. Marina, who had always seen Clara as a pillar of strength, felt a new weight. Guilt for being so absorbed in work that she hadn't noticed her mother's worsening health. Mom, you need to take care of yourself, Marina said, her voice trembling. Clara touched her hand. And you, my daughter? Who's taking care of you? The guilt blended with her perfectionism, creating an emotional storm. Marina began wondering if her obsessive focus on the Aurora Tower was costing her connection with her family. She recalled Clara's words, "You don't need to be perfect to be enough." But in her mind, being enough for her family meant being present, and she was failing at that too. Clara's health situation brought a new dilemma. How could she balance work, which demanded so much, with caring for those she loved? Meanwhile, an unexpected figure entered the story. Ethan, a colleague of Lena's from Pacific Innovations. He appeared at a networking event at Pike Place Market, where architects and designers gathered to discuss Seattle's future. Ethan, 34, was charismatic, with an easy smile and a laid-back approach to design. He praised the Aurora Tower's initial concept, which had leaked to the local press, but asked Marina, "Why do you take so long to finalize? Your sketches are already amazing." The question, asked with genuine curiosity, felt like a challenge. Marina, defensive, replied, "I want it to be the best it can be." Ethan laughed. "The best is the enemy of the good, you know?" The phrase, said lightly, hit Marina like a bolt. Unknowingly, Ethan became a mirror of what Marina could be. Someone who delivered results without being tethered to perfection. Back at the office, the interaction with Ethan stirred Marina. She began to see that Pacific Innovations thrived because its architects collaborated openly, something she still resisted. Lena, who knew Ethan from college, noticed Marina's tension. "He's not wrong, Mari," she said while they worked together. "You've got talent to spare. But sometimes you sabotage yourself." Marina wanted to argue, but the words of Ethan, Lena, and even the old man at the Fremont Troll echoed. Imperfection wasn't the end, but a path. The final challenge came when Marina found an old sketch in her apartment, tucked away in a drawer. It was a college project, a community pavilion she'd never finished because it was imperfect. Looking at it now, she saw beauty in its simple lines, in the boldness of her younger design. Hesitantly, she showed it to Lena. "What do you think of this?" she asked. Lena smiled. "It's amazing, Mari. Why didn't you finish it?" Marina confessed, "It wasn't perfect." Lena shook her head. "And who said it needed to be?" The conversation rekindled Marina's doubt, but also her hope. Maybe, with Lena, Rachel, and even Ethan's help, she could learn to deliver without destroying herself. Walking through Pike Place Market that night, Marina stopped to listen to a street musician playing a violin. The melody was beautiful, but with off-key notes here and there. The crowd clapped, enchanted. Marina felt a lump in her throat. The Aurora Tower's final presentation was approaching, offering a chance to prove she could lead without controlling. But Clara's health, the competition with Pacific Innovations, and Ethan's presence added new layers of complexity. Could Marina balance it all without falling back into the perfectionism that trapped her? The rain had returned to Seattle in full force, turning the streets of Capitol Hill into glistening rivers under the city lights. Marina Cole sat in her apartment, staring at the sketchbook with the community pavilion from her college days. That imperfect drawing she hadn't discarded for the first time. The final presentation for the Aurora Tower was a week away, and the pressure to integrate her team's work, with Lena, Rachel, and indirectly Ethan's thought-provoking ideas, was testing Marina's limits. She felt torn. The seed of change planted by Joao's letter and Lena's words was growing, but perfectionism still pulled her back like an invisible chain. New emotional dilemmas and complex interactions were beginning to force Marina to confront not just her work, but who she was. At the Emerald Designs office, team meetings had become an emotional battlefield. Marina, Lena, and Rachel worked together, but every decision was a test. During one session, Lena suggested an atrium with stained glass walls for the Aurora Tower, a bold idea Marina hesitated to accept. "It's beautiful, Lena, but what if the investors think it's too much?" she asked, her tone laden with doubt. Lena, with her characteristic patience, replied, "What if they love it? You won't know unless you try, Mari." Rachel, normally reserved, interjected, "You already have the perfect structure. Let us add a little soul." Marina felt the urge to revise everything on her own, but she took a deep breath and nodded. Okay, let's try it, she said, her voice trembling. It was a small but painful step, like letting go of a rope she had been holding onto for years. The interaction with Lena revealed a new dilemma. Marina noticed that her friend, with her practical approach, not only delivered results but seemed happy. Lena laughed during meetings, joked with Rachel, and even handled deadline pressure with ease. Marina, on the other hand, felt every mistake as a personal failure. During a coffee break, she confided in Lena. How do you do it? How do you not let the fear of making a mistake consume you? Lena, holding a mug with the Pike Place Market logo, smiled softly. I make mistakes all the time, Mari. But I've learned that one mistake doesn't define who I am. Have you ever considered that maybe your work doesn't need to define you? The question cut deep, forcing Marina to question whether her perfectionism was a pursuit of excellence or identity. Meanwhile, Clara's situation brought an even heavier emotional weight. During a visit to the townhouse in Fremont, Marina found her mother trying to sew despite the pain in her hands. Clara, stubborn, insisted on making a gift for Joao's birthday, a tie with traditional Portuguese embroidery. Mom, you don't have to do this right now, Marina said, worried. Clara looked at her, her eyes shining with determination. If I stop, my daughter, what's left for me? Sewing makes me feel alive. Clara's strength, even in her fragility, was a contrast to Marina's struggle. She realized that her mother, despite the pain, found joy in the process, not in perfection. Have you ever thought about doing something just for the pleasure of it, Marina? Clara asked, almost casually. The question lingered in Marina's mind, an echo of her conversation with Lena. Joao, in turn, began to open up more to Marina, inspired by the letter he had sent. During dinner, he shared another story from his youth, a mistake on an engineering project that almost caused an accident. I blamed myself for months, he said, his voice low. But my boss told me something I'll never forget. A good engineer fixes mistakes. A great engineer learns from them. Joao looked at Marina, holding her hand. You are a great architect, my daughter, but you need to learn how to make mistakes. Her father's vulnerability, something Marina rarely saw, made her cry. For the first time, she wondered if perfectionism was a way to protect herself from the vulnerability Joao now showed with courage. At work, the presence of Ethan from Pacific Innovations added a layer of complexity. During another networking session, he approached Marina with an unexpected invitation. Our team is doing a workshop on collaborative design. Wanna come? It might help you with the Aurora. Marina hesitated, feeling exposed. Accepting meant admitting she needed to learn, something her perfectionism resisted. But curiosity won. At the workshop, she saw Ethan lead with ease, encouraging ideas without judgment. One exercise asked each participant to draw something in 30 seconds, without revising. Marina, tense, drew a crooked tree. When Ethan praised the energy of the drawing, she laughed, surprised. It's not perfect, she said. Ethan smiled. And who needs perfection? The interaction, light but powerful, made Marina question if she could embrace that freedom. Marina's emotional dilemmas reached a peak when Daniel announced that Pacific Innovations had submitted an initial proposal for the cultural complex, increasing the pressure on the Aurora Tower. During a meeting, Vivian Chun, the investor, asked Marina directly, Can you deliver a project that will surpass Pacific's? We need something functional, not an unfinished masterpiece. The direct question reignited Marina's fear. She looked at Lena and Rachel, who encouraged her with subtle nods. We can deliver, Marina said, surprised by her own conviction. But internally, she was shaking. Trusting the team meant risking everything. That night, Marina walked to the Fremont Troll, a place that had become her refuge. Sitting under the bridge, she opened her sketchbook and drew another crooked tree, just like at Ethan's workshop. It was free, imperfect, alive. She thought of Clara sewing despite the pain, of Joao learning from mistakes, of Lena living without fear, of Ethan drawing without judgment. Each of them seemed to have found a balance Marina was still seeking. The Aurora Tower presentation was near, and she knew the next step would require more than talent. It would require the courage to make mistakes, to trust, to be vulnerable. As the rain fell, Marina closed her sketchbook, feeling a mix of fear and hope. For the first time, she believed that good enough could be the beginning of something greater. The week leading up to the final Aurora Tower presentation brought a palpable tension to the Emerald Designs office. Marina Cole felt each hour pass like a growing weight on her shoulders. But something had shifted since her conversation with Clara and the experience at Ethan's workshop. For the first time in years, she wasn't working alone late into the night, obsessively reviewing every detail. Instead, she was surrounded by Lena and Rachel, their voices blending in productive discussions about the project. However, the apparent calm hit a storm that was about to break. On Tuesday morning, Daniel Harper called an emergency meeting. His normally composed face showed signs of worry as he entered the glass conference room. "We've received information that Pacific Innovations is preparing a revolutionary proposal," he announced, his words cutting the air like blades. "They're promising to deliver the cultural complex in half the time we estimated, with a 20% smaller budget." Marina's stomach dropped. The competition was no longer just professional. It was a matter of survival for Emerald Designs. Rachel and Lena exchanged worried glances, but Marina, surprisingly, did not panic immediately. Instead, a strange determination took hold of her. Daniel's revelation brought an intriguing clue to light. Vivian Chun, the investor, had scheduled a private meeting with Marina for Thursday, just 2 days before the final presentation. "She wants to discuss specific aspects of the project," Daniel explained, using air quotes. "This could be good or very bad, Marina. I need you to be prepared for anything." The private meeting was unprecedented. Typically, investors dealt only with Daniel or the entire team. Marina felt a mixture of honor and terror. Why did Vivian want to speak with her specifically? What did she know about the Pacific proposal that Marina didn't? That afternoon, while working with Lena on the final details of the stained glass atrium, Marina received an unexpected call. It was Ethan from Pacific Innovations. His voice sounded different, less laid back than usual. "Marina, can I meet you after work? There's something I need to tell you about the competition for the cultural complex." The invitation, shrouded in mystery, made Marina's heart race. Why would a rival architect want to share information with her? Lena, who had overheard part of the conversation, frowned. "Be careful, Mari. It could be a trap." But Marina's curiosity was stronger than her caution. The meeting took place at Pike Place Market, under the golden lights of the Seattle dusk. Ethan seemed nervous, fiddling with a coffee cup as Marina approached. "Thanks for coming," he said, avoiding eye contact. "Look, what I'm about to tell you might sound strange, but Pacific is planning something that isn't ethical." He paused, taking a deep breath. "They've discovered specific details about your Aurora Tower project. Someone is leaking information from Emerald." The words hit Marina like a lightning bolt. Industrial espionage? The idea seemed absurd, but the seriousness on Ethan's face convinced her he wasn't joking. Ethan continued, his voice low and urgent. "They know about the stained glass atrium, about the energy efficiency, even about the colors you chose. My boss is using this information to create an improved version of your project." Marina felt a wave of anger and betrayal. Who could be leaking information? Her mind raced through the possibilities. Someone on the team? A cleaning staff member? A supplier? "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ethan finally looked at her. "Because I admire your work, Marina. And because this isn't right. You deserve to win on merit, not lose because of betrayal." Ethan's revelation turned the final preparation for the Aurora Tower into an almost military operation. Marina, Lena, and Rachel met at Marina's apartment that night. The curtains closed as if they feared spies. "We need to change some key elements before the presentation," Marina decided, her mind working more clearly than it had in weeks. For the first time, her tendency toward perfectionism proved useful. Her obsessive attention to detail could be the key to overcoming the sabotage. "But we can't change everything," Lena warned. "We have 2 days." Rachel agreed. "Let's focus on the elements that make the difference." The suspicion of a spy within Emerald created an atmosphere of paranoia at the office. Marina began to observe her colleagues with new eyes. Could it be Tom from accounting, who always asked questions about the projects? Or Sarah from reception, who had access to all the documents? The tension was palpable during meetings, with Marina, Lena, and Rachel speaking in codes and whispers. Daniel, noticing the change in the team's behavior, asked if everything was all right. Marina hesitated but decided not to tell him about the leak yet. She needed more evidence. On Wednesday night, the situation became even more complicated. Clara called Marina, her voice weak and worried. "My daughter, your father isn't feeling well. The doctor said it might just be fatigue, but..." Clara's voice trailed off, and Marina felt her world spin. Joao, her emotional safe harbor, was sick? "Mom, I'm coming over," Marina said, but Clara cut her off. "No, dear. You have that important meeting tomorrow. Your father would be furious if you missed it because of him. He's stable. He just needs to rest. Marina found herself torn between family and work, a tension her perfectionism had never prepared her to face. The meeting with Vivian Chen on Thursday arrived, shrouded in mystery and expectation. Marina entered the conference room at the Four Seasons Hotel with her heart pounding. Vivian, elegant in a navy blue suit, greeted her with an enigmatic smile. "Marina, thank you for coming. I wanted to talk to you about some concerns that have come up." The investor paused, studying Marina's face. "Rumors have reached us that information about the Aurora Tower might be shared with competitors. Do you know anything about this?" The direct question caught Marina off guard. Vivian already knew about the leak? How? Marina decided to be honest, telling her about the conversation with Ethan and her suspicions of espionage. Vivian listened in silence, her face impassive. When Marina finished, the investor leaned forward. "Marina, I'm going to be direct with you. We already knew about the leak. In fact, we've been testing your and your team's reaction. The question is, how will you handle this adversity?" The revelation was a shock. Everything had been a test? "Tomorrow's presentation isn't just about the Aurora Tower," Vivian continued. "It's about how you react under pressure, how you lead in times of crisis. That will tell me if I can trust you with bigger projects." Marina left the meeting with her mind racing. What seemed to be a betrayal was, in fact, an elaborate test. But this didn't lessen the pressure. It actually increased it. Had Ethan been sincere, or was he also part of the test? Were the changes they had made to the project sufficient? And how could she lead the team tomorrow, knowing that every move was being evaluated not just on the quality of the project, but on her leadership ability under pressure? That night, alone in her apartment, Marina looked out at the Seattle skyline from her window. The city lights twinkled like earthly stars, and for the first time in weeks, she wasn't revising drawings. Instead, she was reflecting on what she had learned. That perfection didn't exist, that trust was a necessary risk, and that maybe, just maybe, being good enough was truly enough to win not just projects, but life. The final presentation would be more than a professional competition. It would be the ultimate test of everything she had learned about letting go of control and trusting the process. The morning of the final Aurora Tower presentation dawned cold and gray over Seattle, with the heavy clouds mirroring the tension Marina Cole felt in her chest. It was Friday, the day that would determine not only the future of her project, but also her ability to lead under extreme pressure. Vivian Chen's revelation about the leadership test had changed everything. What was once a professional competition had now become an elaborate psychological exam. Marina woke up at 5 a.m., not out of obsession, but from sheer anxiety. For the first time, she didn't know if she was prepared enough, and ironically, that uncertainty felt strangely liberating. At the Emerald Designs office, the atmosphere was one of controlled tension. Marina arrived to find Lena and Rachel already organizing the presentation materials, their voices low but determined. "How are you feeling, Mari?" Lena asked, noting her friend's dark circles. Marina hesitated before answering. "Scared," she admitted, "but in a way I've never felt before. It's like I finally understand that I don't have to control everything for it to work out." Rachel smiled, adjusting the charts on the table. "That's the team spirit we were waiting for." But Marina knew that words were easier than practice, and in a few hours, she would be tested in front of Seattle's most important investors. Daniel Harper appeared in the conference room with an expression Marina couldn't decipher. "Marina, I need to tell you something before the presentation," he said, closing the door. "I got a call from the hospital. Your father, Joao, was admitted during the night. Apparently, it was a minor heart attack, but he's stable." The floor seemed to fall out from under Marina's feet. Joao, her emotional anchor, was in the hospital precisely when she most needed his strength? "He asked you not to go to the hospital before the presentation," Daniel continued. "He said he'd be furious if you missed this opportunity because of him." Marina felt hot tears in her eyes, but a fierce determination grew in her chest. She would do the presentation not just for herself, but for the man who taught her that perfection resided in love, not in the details. The call to Clara revealed more devastating details. He was working late in the garden, organizing his tools just like he always does, her mother said, her voice choked with emotion. "When I found him, he was unconscious near the roses we planted together. The doctors say it was accumulated stress." Marina closed her eyes, remembering her recent conversations with her father about perfectionism and mistakes. João had spent his whole life carrying the weight of perfection, just like her. "Mom, is he going to be okay?" she asked, gripping the phone. "He will, my daughter, but he needs to learn to rest. Just like you." Clara paused. "Do the presentation, Marina, but do it for both of you, for who you are, not for who you think you need to be." Ethan appeared at the office an hour before the presentation, his presence causing curious looks from Marina's colleagues. "I came to return this," he said, handing her a folder. "These are the original Aurora Tower plans that leaked to my company. I want you to know that I was never part of the test they set up." Marina opened the folder, finding her own original blueprints, the ones she had deemed imperfect weeks ago. Seeing them now, she noticed something surprising. They were brilliant, innovative, full of life. "Why did you do this?" she asked. Ethan smiled, a genuine smile for the first time. "Because you deserve to win with your own ideas, not with improved versions that others created based on yours." Ethan's revelation brought unexpected clarity about Vivian Chen's true test. It wasn't just about how Marina would react to pressure, but about how she had evolved throughout the process. The imperfect plans she had discarded were, in fact, her most authentic work. Lena, looking at the original drawings, slapped the table. "Mari, these are the drawings we should have presented from the beginning. They have soul." Rachel agreed, pointing to details she had missed in the obsessive revisions. "Can we incorporate some elements from the originals into today's presentation?" Marina's heart raced, but this time it wasn't fear. It was excitement. "Let's do it," she decided, but together. The situation with João created an emotional urgency that cut through Marina's perfectionist paralysis. As they worked frantically to integrate elements of the original drawings into the final presentation, she realized that her father had been hospitalized doing exactly what she did, trying to control every detail of his life to the point of exhaustion. "I'm not going to repeat his mistakes," Marina murmured to herself, as she consciously chose not to revise a slide for the 10th time. Lena, who overheard, smiled. Finally, the preparation became collaborative in a way Marina had never experienced, with each woman contributing her strengths without her feeling the need to control every decision. During lunch, Marina did something unprecedented. She delegated completely. "Rachel, you handle the final slides. Lena, you review the interior presentation. I'm going to the hospital to see my dad quickly." It was a risk, leaving 2 hours before the most important presentation of her career. But Marina finally understood that some risks were worth taking. At the hospital, she found João awake, pale but smiling. "My daughter, you shouldn't be here," he said weakly. "Dad, I learned from you that family comes first," Marina replied, holding his hand. "But I also learned that I don't have to carry everything alone. I have an incredible team taking care of the presentation." João squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you, not for what you do, but for who you are." Back at the office, Marina found Lena and Rachel putting the final touches on the presentation. For the first time in her career, she looked at the finished work without feeling the need to obsessively revise it. It wasn't perfect. There were small font inconsistencies, a slightly misaligned graph, colors that could have been better coordinated. But it was good. More than good. It was authentic, functional, and represented the best collaborative work she had ever produced. "Is it ready?" Lena asked. Marina took a deep breath, thinking of her father in the hospital, her mother sewing despite the pain, Ethan returning the plans, and her own journey. "It is," she answered, and for the first time in months, she truly believed it. The presentation time was approaching, and Marina felt a mix of nervousness and confidence that was completely new to her. It wasn't the false security of total control, but the genuine confidence of someone who knew she had done the best possible work with the right people by her side. When Daniel appeared at the door announcing that the investors had arrived, Marina didn't feel the familiar panic. Instead, she looked at Lena and Rachel, her teammates, and smiled. "Let's show them what 3 women can create when they trust each other," she said, surprising herself with the naturalness of the words. It was time to find out if good enough was truly enough. The Emerald Designs conference room had never seemed so imposing as it did on that Friday afternoon. Marina Cole entered the transformed space, where leather chairs were arranged in a semicircle before a giant projection screen. The investors were already there, Vivian Chen, elegant and attentive, accompanied by 2 men in suits whom Marina recognized as representatives of Seattle's largest investment fund. Daniel Harper, nervous but confident, made the introductions as Marina, Lena, and Rachel took their places at the front of the room. Marina's heart pounded, but it wasn't the paralyzing terror of weeks past. It was the adrenaline of someone who knew she was about to show her best work, imperfections and all. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Aurora Tower," Marina began, her voice steady and surprising even herself. On the first slides, she showed the project's evolution, from the original drawings she had considered imperfect to the obsessive revisions, and finally, the collaborative synthesis they had achieved. This project represents not just a sustainable building, but a journey of learning about the value of collaboration and accepting that excellence doesn't require perfection. Vivian Chin leaned forward, genuine interest in her eyes. Marina realized she was talking not just about architecture, but about personal growth, and it resonated in the room in an unexpected way. Lena took over the interior presentation with contagious passion. "Every space in the Aurora Tower was designed to be both functional and welcoming," she explained, showing renders of the atrium with its stained glass walls. "We didn't seek perfect symmetry, but rather an organic harmony that reflects the very nature of Seattle." The investors took notes, clearly impressed by the humanized approach to design. Rachel complimented with the graphics and marketing aspects, showing how the project's intentional imperfection could become its trademark. In a world saturated with cold perfectionism, the Aurora Tower offers authenticity, she said confidently. In the middle of the presentation, one of the investors, an older man named Robert Ming, interrupted with a question that cut the air like a blade. "Ms. Cole, I've followed your career. You're known for obsessively revising projects to the point of delaying deliveries. How do we know this won't happen again on a project of this magnitude?" The question was direct, almost cruel, but Marina didn't flinch. "Because I've learned that my greatest flaw can also be my greatest strength," she replied, looking directly at him. "My attention to detail now serves to coordinate an exceptional team, not to control every aspect alone. This project is proof that I have changed." The tension in the room heightened when Vivian Chin made her own intervention. "Marina, during our private meeting, you learned that this entire process was a leadership test. Now I want to know, what did you learn?" Marina took a deep breath, thinking of Joao in the hospital, of Clara sewing despite the pain, of Ethan returning the original plans. "I learned that true leadership isn't about being indispensable, but about making your team so competent that you become dispensable. I learned that good enough isn't mediocrity. It's the wisdom to know when something works and when it's time to move on." The raw honesty of her response created a powerful silence in the room. The critical moment came when Robert Ming brought up the competition with Pacific Innovations. "We saw their proposal yesterday," he said, watching their reactions. "They promised to deliver in less time and at a lower cost. Why should we choose you?" Marina felt her old anxiety rise, but Lena discreetly touched her arm, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. "Because Pacific is offering an improved copy of our original ideas," Marina answered, surprising everyone. "And a copy, no matter how perfected, will never have the soul of the original. You are not just investing in a building. You are investing in a working philosophy that prioritizes authenticity and the emotional sustainability of the team." The most dramatic twist came when Ethan entered the room, invited by the investors themselves without Marina's knowledge. "I apologize for the interruption," he said, addressing Vivian directly. "But I need to clarify something about the Pacific Innovations proposal." Marina tensed, fearing a last-minute sabotage. But Ethan continued. "My company's proposal is largely based on stolen ideas from the Aurora Tower. As an architect, I cannot stay silent in the face of this intellectual dishonesty." He turned to Marina. "Your original work was brilliant. It didn't need our improvements." The silence in the room was deafening. Robert Ming stood up, clearly disturbed by Ethan's revelation. "Are you saying Pacific committed industrial plagiarism?" Ethan nodded. "And more, they knew this was a leadership test orchestrated by you. They tried to use that as an advantage." Vivian Chin didn't seem surprised, only interested in Marina's reaction. "And how do you feel about this, Marina?" she asked. Marina looked at Ethan, then at her team, and finally at the investors. "I feel grateful," she said, surprising everyone. "Grateful to have a team that trusts me, for discovering that my authenticity is worth more than any forged perfection, and grateful even for the unfair competition, because it forced me to grow." The presentation ended with Marina showing an unplanned final slide. A photo of Joao in the hospital, smiling despite his paleness, holding an imperfect sketch she had drawn right there. My father almost died chasing the same perfection that almost destroyed me, she said, her voice choked but steady. The Aurora Tower is not just a building. It's a manifesto that we can create extraordinary things without destroying ourselves in the process. It's a reminder that our humanity, with all its imperfections, is what makes our work truly valuable. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable, but reverent. Vivian Chin stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the Seattle skyline. In 30 years of investing in architectural projects, I have never seen a presentation so human, she said, still looking out. You didn't just present a project, you presented a life philosophy. She turned to Marina. The leadership test is over, Marina. And you pass not when you learn to control your team, but when you learn to trust them. Marina felt warm tears stream down her face, tears of relief, gratitude, and a deep joy she hadn't felt in years. When the investors left to deliberate, Marina, Lena, and Rachel were alone in the conference room. We did it, Lena said, hugging her friend. We don't know what their decision will be yet, but we managed to work as a true team. Rachel agreed, organizing the presentation materials. Regardless of the outcome, this was the best project I've ever been a part of. Marina looked out the window, seeing Seattle stretch out before her, and for the first time in her career, she felt complete. Not because everything was perfect, but because she had finally found the balance between excellence and acceptance, between ambition and humanity. The investors' decision would determine the future of the Aurora Tower, but Marina already knew she had achieved something far more valuable. The peace of being good enough and discovering that this was, in fact, extraordinary. The 2 hours that followed the Aurora Tower presentation were the longest of Marina Cole's life. The investors had retreated to a private room at the Emerald Designs office, leaving Marina, Lena, and Rachel in a state of agonizing suspense. The silence in the conference room was broken only by the distant sound of Seattle traffic and the nervous drumming of Rachel's fingers on the table. Marina paced back and forth, but for the first time, her anxiety wasn't about having forgotten some detail or not being perfect enough. It was the healthy anxiety of someone who had given her best and now had to accept the outcome, whatever it might be. Daniel Harper appeared at the door, his face a mask of professional neutrality that revealed nothing. They want to talk to the three of you again, he announced, motioning for them to follow. Marina's stomach churned, but Lena discreetly held her hand. Together, she whispered, a reminder of how much they had changed as a team. As they walked through the office corridors, Marina saw colleagues trying to hide their curiosity, all knowing that the company's future depended on the outcome of this meeting. Rachel took a deep breath beside her. Whatever the decision, I'm proud of what we did, she said, and Marina realized she felt exactly the same. In the meeting room, the investors were arranged more casually than before. Vivian Chen was seated at the front, while Robert Ming and the third investor, James Sullivan, flanked her. Ethan had remained in the room, which puzzled Marina. Why was he still there after exposing his own company? Please have a seat, Vivian said, her tone impossible to decipher. We've had a very interesting discussion about you all. Marina mentally prepared for anything, remembering Joao's words from the hospital. What mattered wasn't the result, but knowing she had given her best in an authentic way. Robert Ming was the first to speak, his voice softer than during the presentation. Marina, in my 20 years of investing in architectural projects, I've seen many talented professionals destroy their careers chasing an impossible perfection. I've also seen mediocre ones hide behind the excuse that good enough was acceptable. He paused, studying her face. You achieved something rare. You found the balance between excellence and humanity. Your presentation wasn't just about a building. It was about personal growth and authentic leadership. Marina felt tears burn in her eyes, but she held her gaze steady. No matter what came next, she had been seen and understood. James Sullivan, who had remained silent throughout the presentation, leaned forward. The issue with Pacific Innovations and the industrial espionage concerns us, he said, looking at Ethan. We can't invest in an environment where our projects aren't secure. Marina felt a pang of panic. What if the whole leak situation disqualified them? But Ethan spoke up first. Mr. Sullivan, I can guarantee that I left Pacific this morning. Not just because I disagree with their practices, but because I want to work with people who value integrity over results at all costs. He looked at Marina. I'd like to know if you'd be interested in a new member for the team. Ethan's proposal took everyone by surprise, but it was Vivian Chin who brought the conversation back to the main point. The three of you, Marina, Lena, and Rachel, created something special. Not just an architectural project, but a model for how a team can function when there's mutual trust and distributed leadership. She opened an elegant folder. We've decided not only to approve the funding for the Aurora Tower, but also to offer you the contract for the cultural complex we mentioned. It's a $50 million project, the largest our firm has ever funded in Seattle. The silence in the room was dense, filled with emotion and disbelief. Marina could barely process what she was hearing. Not only had they won the competition for the Aurora Tower, but they had also been awarded an even bigger project. Lena squeezed her hand so tightly it almost hurt, while Rachel covered her face with her hands, clearly emotional. There are conditions, of course, Vivian continued, bringing them back to reality. We want Marina to lead the project, but with Lena as co-director of interiors and Rachel as visual communications director. And, she looked at Ethan, if he accepts our offer, we'd like him to join as a sustainability consultant. You've proven that you work better together than anyone does alone. The decision about Ethan created a moment of tension. Marina looked at him, remembering how he had been honest about the espionage and returned the original plans. Do you really want to work with us? She asked directly. After everything that's happened, Ethan nodded, his expression serious. I want to work with people who make me want to be a better version of myself. You do that. Lena and Rachel exchanged glances, then looked at Marina. It was her decision as the team leader. Welcome to the team, she said, extending her hand. But there's one thing you need to get used to. Here, good enough is our standard for excellence. The culminating moment arrived when Robert Ming handed over the contracts for signing. There's one more thing, he said, smiling for the first time. We wanted you to know that the leadership test wasn't our idea. Everyone looked confused. It was your father's, Joao. Marina felt the world stop. He approached us after the first meeting, concerned about your perfectionism. He suggested we create situations that would force you to trust others. The whole leak, the extra pressure, even the competition with Pacific, it was all orchestrated to help you grow. Marina didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Joao, even in the hospital, had found a way to take care of her. Marina's reaction to the revelation about Joao was a mix of astonishment, gratitude, and a profound understanding of how much her family loved her. He did that even while he was sick, she asked, her voice choked. Vivian nodded. Your father told us. My daughter has the heart of a lion and the talent of a genius, but she's destroying herself trying to be perfect. Help her see that she's already extraordinary just as she is. The tears finally came, not from sadness or relief, but from a deep gratitude for having people who loved her enough to create an elaborate plan for her personal growth. When they left the meeting with the signed contracts, the sun had finally broken through the Seattle clouds, bathing the city in a golden light. Marina, Lena, Rachel, and now Ethan walked together to Pike Place Market, where it had all begun with the street artist and her imperfect mural. The same artist was there, working on a new piece. Seeing Marina, she smiled. You're back, and you brought friends. Marina smiled back. I've learned that the best things in life are created in a team. The artist laughed. And that imperfection is just another name for humanity. That night, Marina visited Joao in the hospital, carrying a bottle of champagne, with medical approval, and the signed contracts. She found him sitting in bed, visibly better, with Clara by his side. Dad, did you orchestrate all this? She asked, still in disbelief. Joao smiled, the same tired but proud smile. My daughter, sometimes parents need to give their children a little push so they can see what everyone else already knows. Clara held both their hands. You two have spent your whole lives trying to be perfect. Now you can finally be happy. Marina hugged her parents, feeling for the first time in years that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Imperfect, human, and loved for who she was. The Aurora Tower would be built, the cultural complex would be designed, and Marina would lead the most diverse and talented team of her career. But more important than any architectural project was the structure she had built within herself. The ability to trust, to delegate, to accept that good enough was not giving up but wisdom. As she looked out the hospital window at the Seattle skyline, Marina knew that the real construction had been internal, and that work finally was complete, not perfect but complete. And that was more than enough. It was extraordinary. 3 weeks after the contracts were signed, Seattle was waking up to autumn, with the first golden leaves falling softly over Capitol Hill. Marina Cole walked through the familiar streets, but everything seemed different now. Not because the city had changed, but because she had completely transformed. The Emerald Design's office was buzzing with activity. The Aurora Tower had become local news, announced as a landmark of sustainable architecture in Seattle, and the cultural complex promised to be the most ambitious project of the decade. But for Marina, the real achievement wasn't in the headlines or the multi-million-dollar contracts. It was in the peace she felt waking up every morning, knowing she no longer had to carry the world alone. The new working dynamic with Lena, Rachel, and Ethan was proving to be surprisingly harmonious. During morning meetings, Marina found herself delegating tasks without the obsessive need to review every detail. Ethan brought a fresh perspective on sustainability that perfectly complemented Lena's aesthetic vision and Rachel's communicative genius. "How are you handling all this?" Daniel Harper asked during a coffee break, observing Marina with genuine curiosity. "You seem different. Lighter." Marina smiled, looking out the window at the Seattle skyline. "I've learned that leading doesn't mean controlling. It means creating an environment where the right people can shine." The pressure, however, had not completely disappeared. The cultural complex would be an immense technical and creative challenge. 5 interconnected buildings, including a theater, a library, art galleries, and community spaces. During a meeting with the city council, Marina faced direct questions about her ability to deliver a project of such magnitude on time. "Ms. Cole, we have records of your previous projects that were significantly delayed," said Councilmember Margaret Torres, flipping through a thick folder. "How can we be sure that won't happen again?" The question, though expected, still made Marina's stomach clench. But this time, she wasn't alone. Lena stepped up to answer, her voice calm but confident. "Councilmember Torres, what you're seeing are records of Marina working alone, under unsustainable pressure. We now have a team where each person has specific autonomy and responsibility." Ethan complimented her, showing productivity charts. "Our models indicate that with this collaborative structure, we can deliver the project 15% faster than the original schedule." Rachel finished by presenting a transparent communication plan. "And we'll keep the community informed about every stage, creating public accountability that motivates us to meet deadlines." Marina felt a deep gratitude, not just for their words of support, but for having found people who believed in her and in working together. Her personal life had also found a new balance. Joao was recovering well from the heart attack, but the scare had forced necessary changes in the family dynamic. During Sunday lunches at the Fremont house, conversations no longer revolved around work and achievements, but around simple moments. The garden Joao was redesigning, with help for the first time. The painting classes Clara had started to exercise her arthritic hands, and Marina's plans to buy a bigger apartment where she could regularly host friends. "Do you know what I'm most proud of?" Joao said during one of these meals, cutting tomatoes from his own garden. "It's not the Aurora Tower or the cultural complex. It's seeing that you've learned to be happy." The relationship with her parents had matured profoundly. Marina understood that Joao and Clara's perfectionism didn't come from a place of demand, but of love. They wanted her to have the opportunities they never had. "You always loved me exactly as I was," Marina said one of those afternoons, helping Clara prepare a traditional Portuguese cake. "I just never managed to see it." Clara stopped mixing the dough and hugged her daughter. "Parental love is sometimes imperfect, dear. We made mistakes trying to protect you from failures, but we forgot to teach you that failing is human." The conversation brought healing to old wounds Marina didn't even know she carried. Professionally, challenges continued to arise, but Marina faced them with a completely new approach. When a sustainable materials supplier was late with a crucial delivery, instead of panicking and trying to solve everything alone, she gathered the team for a brainstorming session. "We have 3 options," Ethan said, analyzing alternatives. "We wait for the original supplier, switch to a similar material, or redesign this specific section." Lena suggested a 4th option. "How about we turn this into an opportunity? We can use local recycled materials, creating a unique story for the project." The solution not only solved the problem, but improved the original concept. Marina realized that problems had become catalysts for more creative solutions. The final pressure before the climax came from an unexpected source: specialized media. An article in Architectural Review questioned whether Marina Cole had truly changed or was just hiding her perfectionism behind a competent team. The journalist, Derek Hamilton, had interviewed former colleagues and clients who reported frustrating experiences with her obsessive attention to detail. Cole might have a new team, but a leopard doesn't change its spots, he wrote. We bet that under real pressure, she'll revert to her old habits of obsessive control and chronic delays. The article went viral on architectural social media, creating a public controversy about her leadership ability. The team's reaction to the article revealed how much they had evolved as a group. Instead of letting Marina internalize the criticism, Lena called an emergency meeting. This isn't about you, Mari, she said, tossing the magazine on the table. It's about a journalist who needs to create controversy to sell magazines. Rachel showed analyses of social media. We have more support than criticism. The architectural community is curious to see our response. Ethan was more direct. The best response to criticism is to continue doing excellent work. Let our results speak for us. Marina felt the familiar temptation to respond defensively, to try to control the narrative, but she took a deep breath. You're right. Our work will speak louder than any article. The decision not to publicly react to the article was tested when Derek Hamilton personally called the office, requesting an interview. Ms. Cole, I'd like to give you an opportunity to respond to the criticism, he said, his voice laden with fake concern. Some people are saying you're using your team as a shield to hide your inability for real change. Marina felt the familiar anger rise, the impulse to prove him wrong, to list every improvement she had made. But then she looked around the office. Lena sketching layouts with a smile on her face, Rachel creating presentations with genuine enthusiasm, Ethan calculating energy efficiencies with evident pleasure. Mr. Hamilton, she said calmly, thank you for the opportunity, but I will decline. My team and our project speak for us. That night, Marina walked to Pike Place Market, a ritual she had adopted whenever she needed to reflect on important decisions. The street artist was there again, this time painting a mural about collaboration. Several hands of different colors working together on the same canvas. You're back, the artist said, recognizing Marina. How's that project you told me about? Marina smiled. Growing as it should be. And I've learned that growing sometimes means letting others see our imperfections. The artist laughed. Imperfections are where the light gets in, dear. Without them, we'd just be smooth, soulless surfaces. On her way back home, Marina received a call from Vivian Chin. Marina, I know about the Architectural Review article, the investor said, getting straight to the point. I wanted you to know that we aren't concerned. In fact, we're impressed with how you and your team handled the situation. Marina felt a relief she hadn't expected. I appreciate your trust, she replied. We're focused on the work, not the controversy. Vivian laughed. Exactly the response we expected. By the way, we have another project in mind, a sustainable innovation center. Interested? The proposal was tempting, but Marina didn't answer immediately. Can I discuss it with my team and give you a response next week? Of course, Vivian said, consulting the team before deciding. That tells me everything I need to know about your evolution as a leader. That night, Marina looked out her apartment window at the Seattle lights. The cultural complex would break ground on Monday, the official start of construction that would test everything she had learned about leadership, collaboration, and the courage to be imperfect. The media criticism, the deadline pressure, and the public expectations would create the perfect scenario for the final test of her transformation. But for the first time in her career, Marina wasn't afraid of what was to come. She had a team she trusted, a family that supported her, and most importantly, she had made peace with the idea that good enough wasn't giving up. It was wisdom. The climax of her journey was coming, and she was ready to face it not as the lonely perfectionist she once was, but as the collaborative leader she had become. The day of the cultural complex groundbreaking dawned with a torrential downpour over Seattle, as if the city wanted to test the resolve of everyone involved in the most ambitious project of the decade. Marina Cole woke up at 6 a.m., not from anxiety, but from genuine excitement, a feeling that had taken months to recognize and accept. Outside her Capitol Hill apartment, journalists, onlookers, and critics were preparing for an event that would determine not only the future of the cultural complex, but also whether Marina had truly transformed, or if, under extreme pressure, she would revert to the destructive patterns of obsessive perfectionism that had nearly ruined her career. The ceremony was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the construction site, but at 8:30 a.m. Marina received a call that changed everything. Daniel Harper, his voice tense, informed her that Derek Hamilton, the Architectural Review journalist who had written the critical article, was on site with a film crew, vowing to document in real time whether Marina Cole can maintain her composure when things go wrong. The provocation was deliberate and cruel, but Marina surprised herself by responding calmly. "Daniel, he can film whatever he wants. We have a job to do, and we'll do it well." This was precisely the kind of situation that months ago would have sent her into a spiral of panic and obsessive micromanagement. At the event site, Marina found her team already organizing the final preparations. Lena was coordinating the temporary stage setup, Rachel was talking with local media representatives, and Ethan was reviewing structural plans with city engineers. For the first time in her career, Marina observed the work happening without feeling the need to control every detail. "How are you?" Lena asked, noticing Marina's serene expression. "Ready," she replied, and that's exactly what she meant. Not ready in the perfectionist sense of having controlled every possible variable, but ready to lead her team through any challenge that arose, trusting that together they would find solutions. The first crisis hit at 9:15 a.m., when the main sound equipment failed completely in the rain. The technician reported it would take at least 2 hours to fix, time they didn't have with hundreds of people already arriving. The Marina of months past would have panicked, taken personal control of the situation, and likely delayed the entire event trying to achieve a perfect solution. But today's Marina quickly gathered her team. "Options?" she asked, simple and direct. Ethan suggested using the sound system from the food truck serving coffee. Lena proposed making the presentation more intimate, with people gathering closer to the stage. Rachel saw a marketing opportunity. "What if we live stream it on Instagram? We'll show that we're adaptable and authentic." The improvised solution worked better than any original plan could have. With people gathered in an intimate semicircle around the low stage, the presentation took on a personal and human character that beautifully contrasted with traditional corporate events. Derek Hamilton, visibly frustrated at not having captured Marina in a moment of lost composure, continued filming. But now he was documenting a serene and collaborative leadership that completely contradicted his pre-written narrative. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marina began, her voice clear despite the rain, "today we are not just breaking ground for a new cultural complex. We are planting the seeds of a new way of creating, with collaboration, sustainability, and the courage to be authentically human." The second, more serious crisis came during the official presentation. One of the city council members, clearly influenced by Derek Hamilton's article, interrupted Marina mid-speech. "Ms. Cole, before we continue, I'd like to address the public concerns about your ability to deliver projects on time. How can we guarantee the citizens of Seattle that this complex won't be another project delayed by your perfectionism?" The question, asked publicly and in front of cameras, was calculated to humiliate and destabilize her. A dense silence followed, with everyone waiting to see if Marina would react defensively or with the maturity she claimed to have developed. Marina took a deep breath, looked at her team, then at the wet but attentive crowd. "Councillor Williams, thank you for the direct question. You are right to be concerned." The admission surprised everyone, including Derek Hamilton, who adjusted his camera, hoping to capture a confession of incompetence. "My history shows projects delayed by obsessive perfectionism. But what my history also shows is growth. This project will not be delivered by Marina Cole alone. It will be delivered by a team where each person has specific authority and responsibility." She gestured to Lena, Rachel, and Ethan. "And if we do get delayed, and we won't, I will take full responsibility. But if we deliver on time, and we will, it will be because I learned that excellence comes from mutual trust, not solitary control." The moment of greatest tension arrived when a calculation error in the structural plans was discovered live, during the ceremony. A city engineer, reviewing the final documents, pointed out a discrepancy in the foundations of the main theater. "This calculation here is incorrect," he said, showing the papers to Marina. "This could significantly delay the start of construction." The discovery was caught by the open microphone and echoed to the entire crowd. Derek Hamilton practically leaped with excitement, finally having the collapse under pressure moment he had been waiting to document. All the cameras turned to Marina, expecting to see her fall apart or burst into desperate micromanagement. Instead, Marina did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She laughed. Not out of desperation or nervousness, but out of genuine joy. "You know what?" she said, taking the microphone. 3 months ago, this would have destroyed me. I would have taken the blame personally, tried to fix it alone, and probably made it worse. She looked directly at Derek Hamilton and his camera. But today, I see this for exactly what it is, a problem that can be solved by a competent team. She turned to Ethan. How much time do you need to revise the calculations? 2 hours, he replied, confident. Perfect. Lena, Rachel, can we reorganize the timeline? Both nodded, already pulling out phones to make adjustments. Problem solved, Marina announced to the crowd, and documented live for everyone to see how a real team works. The transformation of a crisis into a leadership opportunity was the definitive turning point. The crowd, which had arrived expecting a formal ceremony, witnessed something much more valuable: authenticity under pressure. Vivian Chun, present in the front row, whispered to her assistant. Now I understand why we invested in her. It's not perfection that matters, it's resilience. Joao and Clara, who had insisted on attending despite the rain and Joao's fragile health, exchanged proud glances. Our daughter has finally learned, Clara murmured, tears mixing with the rain on her face. Joao nodded, holding his wife's hand tightly. She learned that strength isn't about never falling. It's about knowing how to get back up. Derek Hamilton, realizing his narrative had completely fallen apart, made one last desperate attempt to create controversy. He approached the microphone at the end of the ceremony and publicly asked, Ms. Cole, even after today, how do we know you won't revert to old patterns when the real pressure begins? A leopard doesn't change its spots. The question, asked with evident malice, created a tense silence in the crowd. But Marina, instead of defending herself, did something unexpected. She invited Derek to join the project. Mr. Hamilton, you clearly have a genuine interest in the success of this project, even if you express it through skepticism. How about you document our journey for the next 2 years? Full access, complete transparency. If I revert to my old patterns, you'll have your story. If I don't, perhaps you'll have an even better story about genuine growth and change. The proposal left Derek completely disarmed. To refuse would be to admit he was more interested in controversy than in real journalism. To accept would mean betting against his own narrative. After a moment of visible hesitation, he nodded. I accept, he said, putting his camera away. But I want to document everything. The victories and the failures. Perfect, Marina replied. Total transparency. That's how we build trust. The exchange transformed an antagonist into an accountability partner, a move that demonstrated how much Marina had matured in her ability to turn adversaries into allies. The true climax arrived when Marina picked up the symbolic shovel to break ground. With hundreds of people watching, rain falling, cameras rolling, and all the pressure of proving she had truly changed, she paused. She looked at the muddy ground where the cultural complex would be built, then at her team, at her parents, at the Seattle community that had gathered in the rain to support the project. This complex, she said, her voice carrying a genuine emotion that echoed through the improvised sound system, will not be perfect. There will be challenges we didn't foresee, difficult decisions, and moments where good enough will be our best option. And that's okay, because perfection isn't the goal, humanity is. With those words, Marina drove the shovel into the wet ground, not with the obsessive precision that characterized her old movements, but with the relaxed confidence of someone who had finally learned that the value of a project, and a life, did not lie in the absence of flaws, but in the presence of purpose, collaboration, and authenticity. The crowd erupted in applause, not just celebrating the start of a physical construction, but witnessing the end of a journey of self-discovery that had transformed a self-destructive perfectionist into a genuinely inspiring leader. Derek Hamilton continued filming, but now he was documenting not the collapse he had expected, but the triumph of a woman who had learned that being good enough was, in fact, extraordinary. Derek Hamilton, realizing his narrative had completely fallen apart, made one last desperate attempt to create controversy. He approached the microphone at the end of the ceremony and publicly asked, Ms. Cole, even after today, how do we know you won't revert to old patterns when the real pressure begins? A leopard doesn't change its spots. The question, asked with evident malice, created a tense silence in the crowd. But Marina, instead of defending herself, did something unexpected. She invited Derek to join the project. Mr. Hamilton, you clearly have a genuine interest in the success of this project, even if you express it through skepticism. How about you document our journey for the next 2 years? Full access, complete transparency. If I revert to my old patterns, you'll have your story. If I don't, perhaps you'll have an even better story about genuine growth and change. The proposal left Derek completely disarmed. To refuse would be to admit he was more interested in controversy than in real journalism. To accept would mean betting against his own narrative. After a moment of visible hesitation, he nodded. "I accept," he said, putting his camera away. "But I want to document everything, the victories and the failures." "Perfect," Marina replied. "Total transparency. That's how we build trust." The exchange transformed an antagonist into an accountability partner, a move that demonstrated how much Marina had matured in her ability to turn adversaries into allies. The true climax arrived when Marina picked up the symbolic shovel to break ground. With hundreds of people watching, rain falling, cameras rolling, and all the pressure of proving she had truly changed, she paused. She looked at the muddy ground where the cultural complex would be built, then at her team, at her parents, at the Seattle community that had gathered in the rain to support the project. "This complex," she said, her voice carrying a genuine emotion that echoed through the improvised sound system, "will not be perfect. There will be challenges we didn't foresee, difficult decisions, and moments where good enough will be our best option. And that's okay, because perfection isn't the goal, humanity is." With those words, Marina drove the shovel into the wet ground, not with the obsessive precision that characterized her old movements, but with the relaxed confidence of someone who had finally learned that the value of a project, and a life, did not lie in the absence of flaws, but in the presence of purpose, collaboration, and authenticity. The crowd erupted in applause, not just celebrating the start of a physical construction, but witnessing the end of a journey of self-discovery that had transformed a self-destructive perfectionist into a genuinely inspiring leader. Derek Hamilton continued filming, but now he was documenting not the collapse he had expected, but the triumph of a woman who had learned that being good enough was, in fact, extraordinary. Marina's deepest reflection came during a quiet moment that night, after the guests had left, and she walked alone through the complex's corridors. Each space told the story of decisions made together, of problems solved through mutual trust, of imperfections that had become distinctive features. The stained glass atrium, Lena's original idea that Marina had almost rejected for not being symmetrical enough, was now the most photographed spot in the complex, celebrated for its organic, humanized beauty. "How ironic," Marina thought, smiling. "The things I'm most proud of are exactly the ones I would have considered not good enough a few years ago." Marina Cole's story had become a legend in Seattle and an inspiration for professionals around the world. But she knew that the real transformation wasn't in the awards or accolades. It was in the small daily moments, waking up without paralyzing anxiety, delegating responsibilities without fear, accepting praise without seeking hidden flaws, hugging Sophie without worrying about being an adequate mother. The perfectionist who had once nearly destroyed herself chasing an impossible ideal had become a woman who found peace in the journey, not the destination, in connection, not control, in vulnerability, not invulnerability. As she left the cultural complex that night, Marina took one last look at the building, illuminated against the starry Seattle sky. It wasn't perfect. There were small asymmetries that other architects might call flaws, materials that showed the natural wear of time, spaces that could have been optimized differently. But it was extraordinary precisely because it was human, authentic, created by real people facing real challenges with courage and collaboration. "Good enough," Marina murmured to herself, and for the first time in her life, those words sounded not like surrender, but like profound wisdom. She had learned that good enough was not the end of excellence. It was the beginning of a truly extraordinary life. Marina Cole's journey teaches us that true strength is not in perfection, but in the courage to be authentically human. In a world that constantly pressures us to be more, better, perfect, Marina's story is a powerful reminder that our greatest victory can be in learning when to stop, when to trust, and when to accept that good enough is, in fact, extraordinary. If you identified with Marina's struggle against toxic perfectionism, know that you are not alone. Millions of people around the world face the daily pressure to be perfect, sacrificing their mental health, relationships, and happiness in pursuit of an impossible ideal. But as Marina discovered, there is an alternative: excellence based on collaboration, authenticity, and the courage to be vulnerable. May Marina's story inspire you to rethink your own relationship with perfection. Maybe it's time to delegate that task you insist on doing alone. Maybe it's time to accept help from that person who always offers to support you. Maybe it's time to recognize that you are already good enough, exactly as you are, and that this acceptance is not giving up, it's freedom. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone else who might be struggling with the chains of perfectionism. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of transformation and resilience that celebrate our shared humanity. And remember, in a world obsessed with perfection, choosing to be authentically human is the most revolutionary act of all. Until the next journey of discovery and growth, Marina found her peace. Now it's time for you to find yours.